When I was 16, my life derailed in a way that still messes with my head. You know how some families sweep things under the rug and just pretend everything's fine? Yeah, mine didn't even bother with the pretending. I'm Aaron, and back then, I was just your average high school kid, quiet, decent grades, didn't go out much, played guitar in my room to unwind. My family wasn't perfect, but I thought we were okay. My dad, Mark, was a numbers guy, accountant for a logistics firm, always practical, always calm. My mom, Denise, was the complete opposite. Loud, opinionated, always right even when she wasn't. And then there was my older brother, Kyle. 2 years older, charming when he wanted to be, manipulative when he didn't get his way. My dad used to call him the golden boy because of how my mom treated him. It was like he could do no wrong. Spoiled, but smart enough to play the role of the perfect son when adults were around. At home, things were different. I can't count how many times I get blamed for stuff Kyle did. Stupid things, breaking dishes, forgetting chores, sneaking out. But every time, my mom took his word over mine like it was gospel. She had this uncanny ability to look at me and see guilt even when I hadn't done a thing. I used to think maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough to be seen. But that illusion shattered when I came home from school one Tuesday afternoon to find my dad sitting in his armchair, looking like the blood had drained from his face. He didn't even look up when I walked in, which was weird. My dad always greeted us, even if it was just a grunt or a nod. But this time, he was holding a folder, thick and bulging with paper. My mom stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they almost disappeared. Kyle, nowhere to be seen. The second I put my backpack down, my mom snapped, "Aaron, sit down." I remember the room felt colder than usual. It was late fall, and the air outside had started to bite, but inside felt worse. I sat on the edge of the couch, confused and uneasy. My dad finally looked up, and his eyes, normally so steady, looked off. Betrayed. That's the only word that comes close. "Aaron," he said slowly, "your mother found something in our account statements. A withdrawal. A big one. $10,000. Care to explain?" I blinked. "What? Don't play dumb." My mom snapped, voice rising. "We know you took it." I laughed, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? I don't even know how to access your bank account." "Don't lie," she said, stepping closer. "You've always been sneaky. Always hiding things. You used your dad's login. We found the money gone right after you stayed home sick that week." What was she talking about? I had the flu. Legitimately. I spent most of that week curled up in bed, barely able to breathe through my nose, much less hack into online banking. And the idea that I would steal that kind of money? It was insane. I started to protest, but my dad raised a hand. "I want to believe you, son," he said quietly. "But the money's gone. There's no sign of a break-in. No outside access. Someone in this house did it." "I didn't touch anything," I said, standing up. "Why would I steal 10 grand? What would I even spend that on?" My mom's eyes narrowed like she was waiting for me to slip up. "That's what we want to know. And your brother says he saw you using dad's laptop." I froze. "Kyle." Of course. I remember feeling like I'd just been punched in the chest. Kyle had always lied when it suited him, but this was next level. I hadn't even touched my dad's laptop. It stayed on the home office desk, and it was password protected. Kyle, though, he was always in that room. He liked to snoop, liked to play pretend as the favorite son in dad's chair when no one was home. "He's lying," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I didn't do it. I swear." "This is crazy." My mom scoffed. "Of course you'd say that. Lying comes easy to you, doesn't it?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the money. This was about every little resentment she'd built up toward me. Every time I didn't act like Kyle. Every time I spoke up. Every time I existed in a way she didn't like. This was her opportunity to throw me under the bus and feel justified. My dad looked back down at the papers, silent. And that silence broke something in me. He wasn't defending me. Not really. He was just folding in on himself, unsure. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept waiting for Kyle to come home, for him to walk in like nothing happened. When he finally did, around midnight, I was sitting in the hallway outside his room. He looked at me, blinked, and smiled like this was all some joke. "You messed up, man," he whispered. I stood up, heart racing. "You told them I stole $10,000. He shrugged. "Well, someone had to take the fall, and they're already convinced it was you. So why not?" "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do that?" Kyle leaned closer, the fake kindness gone from his face. Because I could. I don't think I've ever felt rage like that. Not before. Not since. But even worse was the helplessness. I wanted to yell, to drag him downstairs and force him to confess. But I knew how that would go. My mom would defend him. My dad would hesitate. And me? I just looked like I was lashing out. The next morning, everything spiraled faster than I could keep up with. My mom said she'd made an appointment. She said I needed help, that I had a problem, that she'd talked to a counselor and found a place for troubled teens who struggle with truth and accountability. A behavioral rehab. At first, I thought she was bluffing, that this was some twisted punishment. But when a van showed up 2 days later with 2 stone-faced men in polos saying they were from a youth facility in the next state over, reality slapped me in the face. I begged my dad not to let them take me. I told him I didn't do it. That Kyle was lying. That mom was wrong. But he just stood there, staring at the floor, fists clenched at his sides. The last thing I saw before the van doors closed was Kyle standing in the driveway, hands in his hoodie pocket, smirking. And that was the beginning of a 2-year nightmare I would never wish on anyone. When I first arrived at the center, I thought there'd been a mistake. Like someone would realize this whole thing was a misunderstanding. That my dad would show up and take me home. That someone, anyone, would believe me. But no one came. And the place wasn't some warm, healing rehab center with therapy dogs and cozy couches. It was cold, institutional. Cement walls painted a lifeless beige. Linoleum floors that echoed every footstep. Bars on the windows, not like jail, but close enough. No cell phones. No contact with the outside world for the first 3 weeks. I wasn't even allowed to call my dad until my orientation period was over. They called it behavioral rehab, but it was really a holding pen for kids whose parents wanted them out of sight. Most of the guys there were dealing with stuff way heavier than me. Drug addiction, gang affiliation, even a few who'd been in juvie before this. And then there was me, the kid who supposedly stole 10 grand and couldn't stop lying. That was my file. That's how the staff treated me. Every day started at 6 a.m. sharp. You got up, made your bed military style, stood in silence for morning head count. Then came group therapy, then chores, then structured outdoor exercise, which was just walking laps around a fenced-in yard with some benches and one sad basketball hoop with no net. Talking during meals wasn't allowed unless it was approved. Any sign of defiance got you docked a privilege. Too many infractions, and you lost your weekly call. Or worse, they put you on reflection. That was basically solitary confinement with a journal and a Bible. I kept my head down mostly, but it didn't matter. The staff already had me labeled as a manipulator, someone who played innocent to avoid responsibility. I was just another entitled kid in their eyes, and I couldn't prove otherwise. When I finally got my first phone call 3 weeks in, I called home. My dad picked up. My voice cracked when I heard him say my name. "Dad, please," I said. "I didn't do it. You have to believe me." There was a pause on the other end. I heard him exhale slowly. "Aaron, I want to believe you. But your mother, she said there's more. She said you tried to delete the bank records." "What? That's not true. I don't even know how to do that." "She showed me your browser history," he said. "There were searches about online banking, password recovery. That's when I realized what Kyle must have done. He'd used my laptop, searched things to make it look like I was planning something, maybe even logged into Dad's email from it. I didn't search any of that," I said, tears starting to form. "Kyle used my laptop. He's setting me up. You know him. You've seen him lie before." But Dad's voice was distant now. "Look, son, you just need to focus on getting better. We'll talk more when you come home." And just like that, the line went dead. My 5-minute call was up. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my hands clenched into fists under the blanket. There was a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. This wasn't just a punishment anymore. This was exile. My own parents, my own family, had thrown me away. 2 months in, we had family visitation day. One Saturday every 8 weeks, families were allowed to visit approved residents for a few hours in the courtyard. I spent the whole week before it hoping my dad would come, that he'd look me in the eye and see the truth. But it wasn't Dad who showed up. It was Mom. She walked in like she owned the place. Bright lipstick, sunglasses, big smile that didn't reach her eyes. She brought Kyle with her. He was wearing designer sneakers and a new jacket. I sat across the table from them, still in my plain gray facility-issued hoodie. "Well, don't you look healthier?" she said like it was a compliment. Kyle just sat there, twirling a plastic fork between his fingers and smirking. I didn't say anything. I couldn't trust myself to speak. We came to check on your progress, Mom continued. Kyle's been doing wonderfully. He got into the college of his choice. A partial scholarship, too. Cool, I muttered. She leaned forward. Aaron, I hope you understand that this is for your own good. You've always had trouble with accountability. This place is helping you grow. I didn't steal anything, I said quietly. Her smile faded. You're still clinging to that lie? I looked straight at her. Kyle did it. You know it. You're just covering for him. She laughed. Actually laughed. That's your problem, Aaron. Always playing the victim. Always blaming others. It's pathetic. Kyle finally spoke. Man, maybe you should just write a book about how life's so unfair. Bet no one would buy it, though. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the concrete. One of the staff members looked over, hand already moving toward his walkie-talkie. You think this is funny? I snapped at Kyle. You ruined my life. You're the reason I'm in here. He shrugged. Or maybe you're just finally where you belong. That was it. I lost it. I lunged across the table, not to hit him. I don't even know what I was trying to do, but the staff rushed over and dragged me away. My mom's voice rang out behind me. See? This is what we're dealing with. You see why he needs help. I got put on reflection for 3 days after that. Alone in a tiny room, fluorescent light buzzing above me, writing in a journal I didn't believe in. The only thing that kept me sane was knowing I only had a year and a half left. A year and a half until I turned 18. A year and a half until I could leave and never look back. The months crawled by. I got good at hiding my emotions. Good at nodding when I was supposed to, parroting back the lines the counselors wanted to hear. I take responsibility. I am working on honesty. I understand the consequences of my actions. Every time I said those words, it felt like I was killing a piece of myself. But it was the only way to get through. I didn't see my dad again during that time. He never visited. Never called. I think deep down, he wanted to believe I was innocent. But my mom was the one controlling the narrative. And Kyle? He'd moved on. By the time I was finally released, he was already in college, living in a dorm paid for by the same savings I'd supposedly stolen. I got home on a rainy Thursday afternoon. My mom picked me up from the center, all smiles again, as if nothing had happened. The drive was silent except for the wipers squeaking across the windshield. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw my dad through the window, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of mail. He didn't say much when I walked in. Just a nod. A quick welcome home. He looked older. Tired. Like something had been eating at him. I moved back into my old room, though it wasn't really mine anymore. Everything had been rearranged. Some of my stuff was gone. My guitar, my posters, even my old sketchbooks. When I asked where they were, my mom said she'd donated some things because they carried bad energy. The next few weeks were tense. I didn't talk much. Neither did Dad. Mom acted like things were normal. Family dinners, small talk, reminders to apply for community college. But something in the air felt off. Like the whole house was holding its breath. Then, one night, it happened. It was late. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs to grab some water. As I passed the office, I saw the light on and heard rustling. I peeked in. My dad was sitting on the floor with a cardboard box in front of him. Old papers, envelopes, folders. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't look up. Just said, cleaning. I stepped closer. He held up a dusty envelope with Kyle's name on it. Inside were bank statements, dated 2 years back, right around the time the money had vanished. He looked at one page, then another, then another. Dad, I said. He didn't answer. Just stared at a printout for a withdrawal made at an ATM. One that had a camera. One that Kyle always used near his favorite sandwich place. Another withdrawal, same week, different location. Cash pulled out in exact amounts that added up to $10,000 over the span of 6 days. Suddenly, he looked up at me. Did you ever touch my laptop? He asked, voice quiet. No, I said. I told you that 2 years ago. He nodded slowly. And Kyle, he had your laptop that week, right? Your mom said he was helping you reset it because you were sick. My throat went dry. Yeah. He stood up, holding the stack of papers. I think I made a huge mistake. Footsteps behind us. Mom. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed again, but this time, her face wasn't smug. It was pale. Mark, she said, let's not dig this up again. He turned to her, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was betrayal. Pure and raw. You knew, he whispered. I was protecting our family, she said. You don't understand. You knew, he repeated, louder this time. You let him take the fall. You let your son rot in a facility because you couldn't face the truth about your favorite. She tried to walk toward him. Mark, please. He stepped back. Don't. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. My mom turned to me then, and for the first time, I saw something crack in her expression. Not guilt. Not remorse. Fear. My dad looked at me. Pack a bag, he said quietly. We're leaving. And then he turned to her, voice low and cold. I'll be filing tomorrow. When you go through something like that, being locked away for a lie, watching your own family turn their backs on you, you don't come out the same. You just don't. Part of me was still 16 when I stepped out of that house for the last time, gripping a duffel bag that held the few clothes and belongings my mom hadn't gotten rid of. But another part of me, that part had aged 10 years in the span of 2. Hardened, cautious, always watching. Dad and I didn't say much in the car. He'd told me to pack a bag and followed through without flinching. No yelling, no dramatic standoff. Just a quiet goodbye to a house that no longer felt like home. The driveway faded into the rearview mirror, and with it, everything I thought family was supposed to mean. We went to a motel that night, a cheap but clean place off the highway. He paid in cash. Didn't even use his rewards card, which I found strange until I realized why. He didn't want Mom to know where we were. He was protecting me now, in his own way. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. Maybe both. But for the first time in 2 years, I slept in a bed without bars on the windows. The next morning, we went to his sister's place. Aunt Lori. I barely knew her growing up. Mom never liked her, said she was chaotic and too nosy. Funny, considering Lori was the first adult to hug me and say, I'm so sorry, kiddo, like she actually meant it. Dad stayed in her guest room for a while. I got the futon in her home office. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. And for the first time since I was 16, I could breathe. I could go outside without permission. I could take a walk, eat cereal at midnight, use a phone without supervision. It was freedom in the smallest ways, and it felt massive. But the freedom also came with emptiness. I had no job, no high school diploma, just a thin stack of transfer credits from the rehab program that didn't count for much. No friends, no college plans. My entire social life had vanished the moment I'd been taken away. Everyone from my old school had graduated while I was locked up, and I hadn't heard from a single one of them since. Either they believed the rumors, or they didn't know what to say. Or both. Rock bottom doesn't always look like crying in the rain or smashing mirrors. Sometimes it looks like staring at your reflection in a microwave at 3 a.m., wondering if you're ever going to matter to anyone again. Dad tried. I'll give him that. He'd cook breakfast some mornings and leave the last pancake for me, even though he loved pancakes. He'd ask if I wanted to talk. Sometimes I did. Mostly, I didn't know how. I was still angry. At him, at Mom, at Kyle, at myself for not seeing it coming. The real turning point came one afternoon when Aunt Lori came home with a used laptop. It's not much, she said, placing it in front of me. But I figured you might want to. I don't know. Right? Apply for jobs, something. You've got time now. I didn't know what to do with it at first. I opened it, stared at the desktop screen for what felt like an hour. But eventually, I started typing. Not a resume. Not a letter to my parents. Just thoughts. Memories. Fragments of the nightmare I'd lived through. I wrote about the facility, about the sterile white rooms, about Kyle's smug face and my mother's eyes when she called me a liar. It poured out of me like floodwater. Writing became therapy. I didn't care if anyone ever read it. It helped me process what had happened. I started posting anonymously online, on forums, then Reddit, under a throwaway account. The responses shocked me. People didn't just sympathize, they believed me. They were angry for me. Some even shared their own stories of being scapegoated by a sibling, betrayed by a parent, sent away for bad behavior that wasn't real. That sense of connection was like a lifeline. And slowly, something started to shift. I enrolled in a GED program through the local community college. Aunt Lori helped me get a bus pass. Dad paid for the textbooks. It felt weird being older than most of the other students, but I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I was building something. A future that didn't rely on anyone else's lies. I passed the GED in 6 months. Scored in the top percentile, too. Dad teared up when I showed him the certificate. He didn't say much. He was never good with emotions. but he gave me the longest hug of my life. With that under my belt, I started looking for work. It wasn't glamorous. First job was stocking shelves at a pharmacy, night shifts mostly. Then a stint at a hardware store. I learned how to show up on time, how to manage money, how to not let resentment eat me alive when customers snapped at me like I was nothing. I saved every dime I could. Bought my own used car, a rusty but reliable Honda Civic with a stereo that only played FM radio. That thing felt like a chariot to me. My own keys. My own escape. Meanwhile, Dad's life was unraveling in a different way. The divorce got ugly. Mom tried to paint him as unstable, claimed he was turning against his own family. But the bank statements, those saved us. Not just the ones he found in the attic, but the ones he requested through official channels. Kyle's withdrawals. Kyle's transactions. One even showed him buying concert tickets during the time I was supposedly sick in bed. And the kicker? Surveillance footage. One of the ATMs kept archival footage longer than usual. It took a lawyer and a lot of phone calls, but Dad got a copy. It showed Kyle, clear as day, smiling, wearing the same hoodie he used to borrow from me, pulling cash out like it was Monopoly money. That video became the smoking gun. Dad didn't show it to me right away. When he finally did, it wasn't to rub anything in. It was to let me know I wasn't crazy, that everything I'd said was true. And even then, all I could feel was numbness. Sometimes you get so used to being doubted that proof feels like nothing. Like you spent so long screaming into a void that when someone finally hears you, you're too tired to care. But it mattered. In court, it mattered. Mom's lawyer backpedaled hard once the evidence came out. She tried to claim she didn't know. That Kyle had lied to her, too. But emails between her and Kyle told a different story. Messages about keeping the story straight. About Aaron's therapy being good for him regardless. About protecting our family image. Dad won custody of the house. Sold it within the month. Split the assets, kept the car. Gave Mom what the court demanded and not a cent more. He never screamed at her. Never dragged her through the mud. Just walked away. And then he came to me with something unexpected. You should decide what happens next, he said one evening. With Kyle. With your mother. Whether we press charges. I was floored. Me? I asked. Why me? Because it was your life they ruined. You're the one who lost 2 years. I didn't answer right away. I sat with that question for days. Did I want revenge? Did I want to see Kyle arrested? My mother in court? Did I want them to suffer? I thought I did. God, I thought about it every night. But something inside me had shifted. Not softened exactly. Just refocused. I didn't want to waste another second being defined by them. So I said, let the court decide. I just want to live my life. And I meant it. I kept working. Kept saving. Got a scholarship to take college classes part-time. Started majoring in psychology, of all things. Maybe because I wanted to understand how people could do what they did and still sleep at night. One of my Reddit posts about the rehab facility blew up. Went viral. Got picked up by a blog, then a podcast. People started reaching out. Sharing. Connecting. That post became a catalyst. Not just for me, but for others. It even caught the attention of a local journalist. They interviewed me, anonymously at first, and did a deep dive on the rehab program. Turns out, I wasn't the only one wrongfully sent there. The facility eventually came under investigation for multiple allegations, falsified reports, abuse, even mismanagement of funds. It was shut down less than a year later. That was the first time I realized I wasn't just rebuilding. I was making noise. And that noise mattered. Kyle eventually dropped out of college. No one knows the full story. Some say he got expelled for cheating. Others say he just stopped showing up. He moved out of state after that. Haven't seen him since. Mom. Well, her reputation didn't survive the divorce. Turns out, when you build your entire social life on pretending to have a perfect family, that image doesn't last long after the truth comes out. She moved in with her sister. Tried reaching out once, through a letter. I never opened it. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done giving her power over my peace. Now, years later, I'm 22. I live in a small apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it's mine. I tutor high school students on the side, help them write college essays. Sometimes they ask about my story, why I went into psychology. I just tell them, life teaches you a lot when you're not looking. But recently, something happened that brought it all back. Something I didn't see coming. It started with a knock on my door, and on the other side was someone I never expected to see again. The knock at the door that evening didn't sound urgent, just 2 measured taps. I was in sweatpants, half watching a documentary on human memory for one of my psych classes, a bowl of half-eaten instant noodles in my lap. Nothing about that night felt special. But sometimes life doesn't cue the music or dim the lights when it wants to change everything. Sometimes it just knocks. I opened the door with the chain still on, peeking out through the gap. "Hey," said the figure in the hallway. I froze. My grip on the door tightened. It was Kyle. Older, leaner, unshaven. Dressed in a hoodie that had clearly seen better days. Backpack slung low over one shoulder. He looked like someone who'd run out of couches to crash on and was trying to fake confidence through exhaustion. I didn't say anything. I didn't even fully register the emotion that flooded me. Anger, shock, disbelief. It all tangled up in my throat. He held up a hand, like I was a cop and he needed to prove he wasn't armed. "I know. You probably want to slam the door in my face." "Fair." I said nothing. I need 5 minutes. Please." I looked him over. Kyle, the same guy who ruined 2 years of my life with a smirk and a lie. The same guy whose actions fractured our family and almost destroyed me. And now he was standing outside my apartment like a lost dog. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was closure. I unchained the door and opened it. He stepped in slowly, like he expected a trap to spring at any moment. The apartment was dim, quiet, warm. He looked around like he hadn't been indoors in a while. "You live here alone?" "Get to the point," I said. My voice came out colder than I expected. It surprised even me. He nodded and sat on the edge of the futon, my only piece of furniture besides a thrift store bookshelf and the wobbly kitchen table. "I messed up," he said. "I know that doesn't even scratch the surface, but I don't know where else to start." "You think I care about apologies?" I said. "You think I've just been waiting to hear you say my bad and all this goes away?" "No," he said quickly. "No, I know that. I'm not here for forgiveness." "Then why are you here?" He hesitated, looked down at his hands. "I don't have anyone else. Mom won't return my calls. Her sister kicked me out last week. I've been couch surfing. I was living with a friend, but they found out what happened back then. About the money, the rehab, everything." My heart thumped once. Hard. "How?" "That Reddit post," he said, not meeting my eyes. "The one that blew up?" "Someone recognized the details. It went around my old college. Word got out. So he knew." I sat down across from him, folding my arms. "And now you want what, money? A place to stay? A clean slate?" He laughed bitterly. "Man, I don't even want sympathy at this point. I thought maybe if I could talk to you, own up to it, maybe I could start over." I narrowed my eyes. "You think coming clean fixes anything?" "No," he said, voice cracking. "But it's a start." We sat in silence. My mind wasn't sure what to do with him being there. For years, I'd pictured this moment a dozen different ways. Him begging for forgiveness, me slamming the door, maybe even yelling, throwing something, making a scene. But now that it was real, I felt nothing, just calculation. And somewhere in that stillness, I felt the gears start to turn. Because if Kyle was finally cornered, if he had no allies left, then maybe it was time I stopped surviving and started rebuilding something else. Leverage. "I want a full confession," I said finally. "Written. Signed. Every detail." He blinked. "What? You heard me. You want to start over? Then tell the truth. Not to me. On paper. Everything you did. How you stole the money. How you framed me. How Mom helped cover it up." He rubbed his face. "Dude, I'm not writing a signed confession like some TV crime drama." "Then get out," I said, standing up. He stayed put, glancing at the door, then back at me. "If I do this, what do I get?" "You get a chance," I said slowly, "not to have your name dragged through court. Because I still have the ATM footage, the emails, the bank statements. I've got enough evidence to make sure you'll never be able to open a checking account without a red flag popping up." Kyle swallowed. "And if I wanted," I added, "I could go public. Not anonymously this time. Full names. Full history. Turn the next Reddit post into a news story. You'll never get hired anywhere decent again. And Mom, she'll go down with you. She's got just as many skeletons." His shoulders slumped. The weight of it hit him. "Finally. I'll write it," he said quietly. "Good." He stayed the night. I didn't offer it. He just never left. I didn't let him sleep in my bed or even on the futon. I gave him a blanket and let him curl up on the floor. In the morning, I handed him a notebook and a pen. "Write," I said. It took him 2 days. Every word was dripping with shame. But he wrote it all. The plan to take the money. The passwords he guessed from Dad's notes. Using my laptop to plant search history. Changing the withdrawal schedule so it looked like I'd spaced out the theft. Mom's involvement. How she found out days after and decided to bury it, afraid it would ruin the family if Kyle got caught. When he handed it to me, his hands were shaking. I meant it, he said. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know I'm done lying. I didn't say anything, just took the notebook and locked it in my desk. Now I had a weapon. The next few weeks, I planned. I dug up old files, cross-referenced email headers, printed out texts Mom had sent me while I was locked away, messages that contradicted her claims in court. I contacted the journalist who'd interviewed me anonymously before. I told her I was ready to go public, with names, dates, evidence. She was stunned. Are you sure? This could ruin them. That's the idea. But I didn't want to ruin them with noise. I wanted precision, control. So I made a list. First, the rehabilitation center. Their shutdown had been a small story in the press, but nothing explosive. I'd learned since that several lawsuits had fizzled out due to lack of documentation. I had what they didn't, a paper trail from before I even entered the facility, documenting my protests, my innocence, and now Kyle's confession confirming the setup. That alone could trigger a civil case. Not just for me, but for others still reeling from their experience. Second, Mom. She still lived with her sister, from what I'd heard. Still active in her church and local charity scene, pretending to be a model citizen. I reached out to someone she'd wronged years ago, our old neighbor, Mrs. Halvorson. The one Mom had blamed when her jewelry went missing. Kyle pawned it, by the way. Mrs. Halvorson didn't forget. She agreed to give a statement. Third, Kyle. He was at my mercy now, but I didn't want him to disappear before the story broke. So I let him stay with conditions. No phone. No unsupervised internet access. No contact with Mom. He worked temp jobs during the day and came back to my apartment each night like a kid on probation. Some nights he tried to talk. I let him. I didn't give much back. And the more I watched him, the real him, stripped of smugness and safety, the more I realized something. He was scared. Not of me. Not exactly. But of finally facing something he couldn't lie his way out of. The revenge plan took shape slowly. Not with fire or fury, but with facts. I built a digital archive. Scans of the confession, court transcripts, emails, texts, voice recordings. I reached out to the other kids I'd met at the rehab center, those who'd posted anonymously, those who had similar stories. I started putting together a case. A real one. And just when everything was ready to launch, I got an unexpected message. A lawyer. Not Dad's. A different one. He represented the rehab's former owner. And he offered something shocking. A settlement. Apparently, word had gotten out about the story I was preparing. Someone leaked it, maybe one of the Reddit users, maybe one of the journalist's contacts. The facilities board wanted to keep things quiet. They were offering hush money. A lot of it. I stared at the email for a long time. I could take it. Pay off my school loans. Move. Start over in a real way. Or I could blow it all up. And as I sat there, weighing the offer, I realized something. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about choosing the legacy of my pain. Would I bury it and cash out? Or make sure the world knew what they did? I looked across the room. Kyle was asleep on the floor again, curled up with that same borrowed blanket. For the first time, I didn't see him as the villain in my story. He was just the first domino. And I still had a whole row left to knock down. Kyle left my apartment a few days after writing the confession. Not in handcuffs, not in disgrace, but quiet. Almost like he knew the sentence had already started. He didn't say goodbye, just left a note on the coffee table. Whatever happens next, I earned it. And that was true. The settlement offer from the rehab center's former board had been tempting, absurdly tempting. A six-figure payout in exchange for silence. They wanted me to sign an NDA, bury the story, and move on with my life. It was enough money to pay off my school debt twice over, relocate, start fresh. But something inside me couldn't do it. Because if I took the hush money, they'd get to keep the lie. They'd go on pretending they weren't complicit in ruining lives. That places like that weren't cages with wallpaper and therapy lingo. And worse, Kyle and my mom would keep skating by in silence. No, I emailed the journalist the next morning. I'm ready. Names, dates, files. I'll sign whatever you need. What happened next was like watching a storm brew from the inside out. The article dropped in late October. It was titled The Good Son: How a Teen Was Institutionalized After His Brother Stole $10,000, and What Happened When He Fought Back. It opened with my name, my real name, my face, blurry but visible. Then it broke down the full story, the bank statements, the staged browser history, the confession, the facility's practices, the emotional toll, the broken family, the aftermath. And it didn't stop there. The journalist had done her homework. She'd interviewed other former residents of the rehab center, dug up financial records showing how parents were billed for extended stays that weren't medically necessary. One family had been forced into debt. Another had lost custody of their son temporarily because the facility flagged him as non-compliant and potentially dangerous, a lie based on a refusal to recite a fake apology in group therapy. The story exploded. Within a week, it hit front pages on multiple platforms. The podcast that originally covered my anonymous Reddit post re-released a new episode, with my voice, this time. I told my story in full. Every lie, every betrayal, every second I spent counting down the days on the cement floor of that facility, wondering if anyone would ever believe me again. By the second week, legal teams were reaching out, not to sue me, but to join forces. A class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of 23 former residents, myself included. I wasn't doing it for money anymore. I had a full scholarship now, offered by a foundation that heard the story and wanted to support me through the rest of my degree. No, this lawsuit wasn't for survival. It was for the kids still stuck in places like that. And then came the fallout. First, the facility. The state opened a full investigation into their operations. 2 former staff members testified under oath that they were instructed to exaggerate behavioral issues to prolong stays. Several documents surfaced showing altered records, residents being marked as violent for things like refusing to make eye contact or asking for their phone. The rehab center was not only shut down permanently, but criminal charges were filed against its former administrators. One was arrested for fraud, another for falsifying medical records. The program director, the one who ran my intake interview, who looked me in the eye and said I needed reprogramming, was barred from working in healthcare ever again. Second, my mother. Her reaction came 2 days after the article broke. A text. Just one line. How could you do this to your own family? I didn't answer. She sent another. And another. Then tried calling. I blocked her. She went to Dad, furious. Tried to spin it as me dragging the family name through the mud. He didn't even let her in the house. From what Aunt Lori told me later, he said, "You dragged your own name through the mud." Erin just held up a mirror. Her reputation? Gone. Her precious image as the perfect suburban martyr? Obliterated. Several people in her community group resigned when they read the article. The nonprofit she volunteered with dropped her from their board, pending clarification. The same woman who once called me a liar to my face now couldn't walk into the grocery store without whispers. She sent one more letter. This time, no accusation. Just a desperate, rambling apology. I thought I was protecting Kyle. I thought you were strong enough to handle it. I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't open it either. Third, Kyle. He got fired from his latest job when someone recognized his name. His attempt to apply to another university? Rejected, thanks to the public records now attached to his name and the article that trended for weeks. He vanished from social media. Then one night, he emailed me. Not to ask for forgiveness, not to beg. Just an update. I'm staying with a guy from a halfway house. Working at a warehouse in Oregon. It's hard, but honest. That's all I can do now. I still read your articles sometimes. Reminds me of the line I crossed. I didn't respond. Not to be cruel, but because there was nothing more to say. He wasn't the main villain anymore. He was just another casualty of his own lies. And then, finally, me. I graduated top of my class. The foundation that sponsored my degree asked me to speak at a youth justice summit that summer. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of people, counselors, educators, policymakers, and told them how easy it is to bury a kid when the wrong person tells the right lie. How systems aren't broken, they're built that way. And how the hardest part of surviving isn't getting out. It's being heard. When I stepped off that stage, a boy around 15 came up to me with his dad. He didn't say much, just hugged me, tight. His dad nodded, eyes glassy, and said, "Thank you for saying what he couldn't." That was the moment I realized I'd done the right thing. I'd taken everything they tried to bury me with and built something stronger. Not revenge for its own sake, but justice that echoed. A reminder that even if the world tries to write you off as broken, there's power in picking up the pen yourself. I moved to a new city that fall. Started working with a nonprofit that provides legal aid to teens in crisis. Every time I walk into that office, I think about the day I stood in my kitchen at 16, being accused of something I didn't do, and how no one listened. Now, I make sure someone does. As for my past, it's still with me. Scars don't vanish, but they remind you where not to walk again. And sometimes, just sometimes, they show you where to build your armor. Because when the world tells you your truth doesn't matter, and you prove them wrong, there's no feeling quite like it.
Should I use a wok? Should I use a wok? Is this the weird angle for you guys? Because I feel like you guys never see me in this angle, right? Like a stir fry? Yeah. I'm making stir fry. This is a weird angle. Do you not like Uncrustables? I've never had them. I don't know what it's like. Which angle do you guys? Can you guys stay here? Is that good? Angle is okay. Like this? Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. So I normally use avocado oil. I think I'm gonna put my hair out. I normally use avocado oil when I cook. Really? I have to send you some? Yeah. อยู่นิวซีแลนด์เหรอครับไม่ใช่ครับอยู่ออสเตรเลียค่ะอยู่ออสเตรเลียแต่ก็ใกล้อยู่แต่ว่าเป็นลูกครึ่งนิวซีแลนด์ก็เลยมีแท็บ